Welcome to the Patricia Fripp Sales Seminar. And as always, you are in for a treat. We have a very special guest who is a legend in speaking and strategic selling. 20 years ago, Shari Levitin coined the term third-level selling. Since then, she's trained thousands of salespeople and corporate leaders on a system of emotional selling. This innovative system revolutionized the sales process and has created, hold on to your hats, $1 billion of return on investment for some of the world's top corporations. Shari's known for increasing income, drive, and job satisfaction for people around the world. She has spoken in over 40 countries on 5 continents. She's the author of a new book called Heart and Sell, 12 Universal Truths Every Salesperson Needs to Know. And I am sure if we twist her arm a little, she'll give us a couple of the techniques from that book. And she is an adjunct professor at the University of Utah's David Eccles School of Business. She's teaching the first ever Pitch Perfect sales course. And this session is on the new science of high impact sales. Hello, Shari, welcome.
Hi, Patricia. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. My goal here today is to take that $1 billion of ROI and share it with everybody that's on the phone today, because I think we could all use a little more income and a little bit more free time. What do you think?
That would be wonderful. And so I know everyone's chomping at the bit. And as always, we have another sidekick called Paul, who will tell you how you can interact with us and bring up the first poll. Take it away, Paul.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a chat box. Within that chat box, you'll be able to ask your short, specific questions throughout the webinar. Your questions will be answered live. Make sure to get them in sooner rather than later, so we do have plenty of time to answer them. If we're unable to get to your question during the webinar, it will be answered offline via email. In addition to the chat box, you'll see a polling question area just at the bottom. All you have to do when a polling question comes up is select your answer and then click vote. We'll discuss the results of the poll during the call. And for the first poll, we'll get started with, how would you describe your role? Are you a salesperson or are you a sales manager? You'll have about a minute to answer, and we'll be back with the results shortly.
Obviously, those tuned in and those watching us as a replay, some are from my community, some are from Shari's. But for those who do not know, how and when, Shari, did you get started in sales?
Gosh, the first time? You mean not when I was 4 years old selling popsicles?
Perhaps a little later.
You know, we say we're all selling all the time, but really, Patricia, what comes to mind, I had just finished my 4th year of university at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and my parents flew out from Los Angeles, and they were so proud of me. And there we were at a very fancy hotel called the Boulderado with Eggs Benedict and all the fixings. It was a beautiful day. And my father came down the steps with a big grin on his face and an envelope. And I'm thinking, oh, it's my graduation present. I was really excited, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's a new car like Kathy got, or maybe a trip to Europe like Colleen got, or if I'm really lucky, you know, maybe it's a down payment on a condo. I want my own place to live now that I've graduated. And so the anticipation was just killing me, right? So Dad sits down, and he hands me this envelope, and it's on parchment paper. And he says, this is for your graduation. So I open up this envelope, Patricia, and there in fine, fine writing, it says, congratulations, you're present. Your total and complete independence. So I looked at it, not understanding what that meant, until all of a sudden I understood it meant no more money from Dad. That's it. We put you through college. You know, you're on your own. And I guess at the time, I didn't realize he really had given me the best present of my life. Now, Of course, back then, I really wanted the car or the condo or whatever else. But what happened is I ended up pursuing my first position in sales. And from there, I have had the most marvelous life. So I just want to say, if anybody is brand new or considering a profession in sales, there is no better profession. Now, there's a very interesting statistic that I want to share with the audience. There was a recent Harvard Business Review article that said 46% of all college graduates, regardless of their major, will end up in sales.
Wow.
So the reality is the world of sales is opening up. And there's all types of different sales today. There's business to consumer sales. There's inside sales, the hottest segment of the market today. But the reality is no matter what you do or who you are, increasing your sales skills is going to help you throughout your life. So that was probably the first time I ever got in sales, Patricia, or realized I was in sales.
And just so we know who we're talking to, Paul, how many sales managers and how many sales professionals?
Well, we have 59% of the polling answers are salespeople, or I'm sorry, 60%, and then 40% are sales managers, with a bonus of one sales management consultant that wrote that into the chat box.
Okay, good. Well, everyone is welcome, and the principles and the information will apply to everybody. So let's roll up our sleeves, Shari. What is the biggest mistake salespeople make?
Ooh, I'm asked that one all the time. And I mean, I guess I could say that we don't build deep rapport. We have sort of this shotgun approach or a surface rapport building. I could probably say premature demonstration syndrome. We demonstrate our product or service before we really have the information we need. I could talk about not telling the customer what the product doesn't do in order to build trust. There's a million things I could talk about. I have a list of probably 50 to 100. But here's what I think the biggest mistake salespeople make is we know what to do. Now, I just heard we have a ton of pros on the phone. So what were those numbers, Paul? 59% sales, the rest in management. We're all pros here. So my guess is you know what to do. You've read it, you've learned it, you've had training. You're observant. You're a top performer, or you're a middle performer wanting to get to the top of your game. So you've heard these things before. Here's my question for you. Why aren't you doing it? See, that's the thing. There's this gap between knowing what to do and then actually doing it and saying, gosh darn it, how did I miss that? And that's what I find the biggest mistake salespeople make is there's a gap. And we're going to talk about why that happens. Turns out there's actually a scientific reason it happens. And I'd like to start with a quick story. I was giving a seminar, this was a few years ago, and we were in Mexico. There were hundreds of people there. And at one of the breaks, a gentleman came running up to me. And he was an older gentleman, and he was sort of sweaty. It was a hot environment. And he said, "Sure, I have to talk to you. I have to talk to you." He says, "I've been going to your trainings for years. I've bought all your DVDs, your online training, and I just got to tell you something. Your training doesn't work." So I'm a little taken back, right? And of course I'm wondering, okay, well then why are you here? But I did a little bit of a deep dive, and I said, okay, Alec, why does my training not work? Tell me what you're thinking. Turns out Alec knew everything. He knew all the jargon. He knew the questions to ask. He knew what to do in his head, but when it came to executing them, he didn't actually do them. There was a gap between knowing what to do and actually doing them. And that's when I started studying salespeople and started studying this phenomena. And I came up with an acronym for it that I'm going to share with you. It's called Sales Hell. And I hope I'm not offending anybody here today. But really, it goes back to a scientific principle called default mode. Turns out there's a center in our brain that actually lights up, paradoxically, when we're relaxed, when we're not doing anything. It's called the default mode network. So, for example, if we're chilling out watching a good film, if we're laying on a rock in the sun in nature, we're in that default mode, okay? Now, that's lovely. It's wonderful. It's relaxing. It helps us rejuvenate. But you don't want to be in default mode when you're engaging with a customer. Okay, you need all of your resources, all your capacities. So that's what happens. And I first heard about this when I was in an Anusara yoga class. I practice yoga, and my teacher David told me, he says, we all have certain tendencies. And in yoga, he said the tendency is to sort of have bad posture. It's a default mechanism. So we slouch. We all know that. If we're not thinking about it, if we're not engaged, we slouch. Why? Because it's easier. Okay, we have a tendency to not breathe fully. Okay, we'll catch ourselves saying, gosh, I'm nervous. Why did I hold my breath? This is all default mode, and there's a tendency for us to go into default mode. So what I find, your original question is, what's the biggest mistake we make as salespeople? It's not knowing why we don't do what we're supposed to be doing. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit about what the acronym Sales Hell is, why we do that. So the first one is simply habit. Okay? So, we've been doing something long enough, and what's going to happen is we're going to go on automatic pilot. We're just going to go in automatic mode. So, for example, you think about this, and I ask everybody to think about this. Next time you brush your teeth, see if you do it in the exact same way tomorrow as you did the day before, the day before, the day before. We have certain habits about how we parallel park, about how we answer the phone, that we go the same routes to work. We have habits. And so we have very negative tendencies. Salespeople have negative tendencies and negative habits that need to be broken. Okay? And we talk about ways that you can do that. So that's why when you look at a sales situation, why we might, for example, talk more than we listen. We may have a negative tendency or a negative habit to show the customer a product in a certain way and not allowed for feedback. Okay, so there's many habits. Stories. You're the master at telling stories, Patricia. A lot of us have a habit of not being specific when we tell a story. So they're not evocative. We're not creating an image. And again, we've been telling that darn story for so long, we don't realize it's not creating any emotion anymore. It's not doing anything. It's not moving the customer to action. Okay? So we do a lot of things out of habit, and that's the first part of going into sales hell.
Okay.
You want the second part?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I feel I have an E and two L's coming up.
We have an E and two L's. Tell you what, I'll tell you a couple of more. The E is the toughest one. And I'm going to let everybody guess just at home what the E stands for and why sometimes we fail. So I'd like to get some feedback from people in the audience, and I'm going to go ahead and look at my chat. Does anybody know what the ego might stand for?
And while you're waiting for them, remember that there's about a minute of a delay, so there might be just a little while before they start responding. So if you want to elaborate a little bit while they're getting that feed, and their answer should start coming in soon.
Well, I think you just gave them the answer, because I think you said what you wanted to ask, what does the E stand for?
I did, and you know what? I'm seeing.
You told us, you said, what does the ego stand for?
Oh, well.
They know the answer.
I think I'm in default mode.
They've all got the right answer because you told them. I can see they're going in very fast and furious.
But you know what? You know what this proves? They're
What?
listening. They're listening. They're engaged.
Yeah. Good.
They're not in their default mode network. So I see, yes, Andrew, Tara, Matt, Joe, Mary, Beverly, Deborah, you're all right on. Yes, we have ego. Now, I want to talk about ego for a minute because I think this is
Isn't ego good?
Well, this is what I was going to say. There's two types of ego, okay? And Gallup, of Gallup Polls, talks about this. There's the type of ego that gives you the ability to claim greatness, to say, you know what? I'm going to be #1 in my company this summer. I'm going to buy myself a brand new BMW, and I'm going to get a promotion, and I'm going to get my boss's job. Congratulations, that's good ego. There's the ego that says, you know what, I want to be like Patricia Fripp one day. I want to be a Hall of Fame speaker. I want to be one of the most sought-after speakers in all of National Speakers Association around the world, do high-power interviews. That's good ego. Here's what's bad ego. Bad ego says, It's not my fault. I can't, I can't help it. That was a lousy customer. The leads are lousy. It's bad ego that doesn't take feedback. I will tell you, and people that know me have heard me say this 1,000 times before, Patricia, one of the most important lessons I learned from my mentor early on, and if you're on the phone listening and not driving, please write this down. He told me, Shari, there's 3 goals of any sales encounter. The first goal is make the customer feel better about you and your company when they leave than when they came in. That's number 1. And of course, it's more important today than anything, because if somebody's unhappy today, they tweet it out to 10,000 people. They don't just tell 10. He said number two goal is make a sale. And number 3, if you didn't make the sale, find out the real reason why, learn from it, and don't make that mistake again. Because here's the thing, so often we just brush it off and we don't learn from our mistakes. Every sales encounter, every life encounter is a learning experience. But you need to be proactive and ask. Find yourself a mentor. I talk about that in Heart and Sell. How do we find a mentor? How do we get positive feedback? Managers, how do you give effective feedback? There's 5 ways to give effective feedback. And that way we can learn from our non-sales. And if we keep doing that and keep doing that, that's how we double and triple our income. Okay? And for the other 2 on Sales Hell, you're just going to have to read the book, Patricia.
Oh.
I'm a salesperson. But yes, we go into default mode. And I think that that's the important part of the conversation, is to know why you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That is a key element. And as soon as we can sort of stop ourselves and say, is it habit? Okay? Is it ego? Or is it the other 2? Okay, I'll give them to you. I've got all kinds of people saying, please, please, please. The third one is laziness. Okay? So it's just sheer laziness. And we don't have the time to talk about all the components of that, but I wanted to give you, what it is. So it's actual laziness. And the fourth, of course, is a lack of knowledge. Okay, we just don't know. Either we're new or we don't have the distinction for it. And there is so much neuroscience today on everything from how to tell a story to how to connect. We really need to be increasing our knowledge all the time of technology, how to use it, how not to rely on it. I find a lot of salespeople rely on it and they lose their personality. You need to stand out from the crowd.
And Shari, we have a poll, which if Paul would like to bring out, which is about how to get out of sales hell. So we want people to look at of the HELL, which they would self-identify as their challenge.
Yeah, and again, it's
the way it's written.
Yeah, and again, it's something you want to look at all the time, and you can start saying, okay, I made this mistake today. I never built rapport with my customer. Take that one, for example, and think, gosh, I just know I never really connected. I really didn't build trust. Now, there's 5 rules to building trust, but if you didn't do it, because you may already know the distinctions of building trust, why didn't you? Were you tired? Were you lazy from the night before? Is it habit that you sort of brush through the connecting step and you don't really get to know them? Is it ego? Is it, hey, I got such a darn good product, who in the heck needs to build trust? Or is it just a lack of information? Well, sure, I don't know the 5 steps to building trust. If I knew, I'd do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Paul, we've got what part of sales hell are you in? And Paul, I believe this has now been up long enough. Would you like to tell us the results?
Yes, we have a majority in habit, 69%. Ego is 0. Laziness, they consider about 8% of themselves, and lack of knowledge would be 23%. So H will habit, lack of knowledge, laziness, and ego in that order.
All right, good. Well, so lack of knowledge, because this is interesting, Shari, because we're both in the training industry. We've spent years and years training, and I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what I like to call the dirty little secret of the training industry, which is that when you have a great speaker, as you are, an audience who is enthusiastic about the subject, and you know, everything works. You know, got the right speaker, the right audience on the right subject. And even with the best training, 70% of the information will be forgotten after 2 weeks of a live session.
Exactly right.
Which is why both of us invested in online learning, because we both believe it's repetition and reinforcement. So after years of, you were racing around the world delivering how many programs a year? 300?
300 at one point, yeah, 300 a year.
And you, based on the request of your clients, was it, you created your online learning program?
Yeah, we had people, Patricia, all over the world that were asking us, how do we get your content in India? How do we get your content in Argentina? Or we'd have salespeople here in North America that said, I loved that. I loved those discovery questions, those needs analysis questions I'm supposed to ask, but can you remind me what it was again? Jeannie, by the way, just asked a good question, and I wanted to address it, and I thank you for your participation. Jeannie said, I'd love to build a relationship, but people are in such a hurry today, which is, we talk about the changing client. They just want a quote. They say, can you just give me a quote on the phone? And that's very common. The last thing you want to do, Jeannie, is just give them a quote on the phone, okay? Because they don't know what the quote's about. You've got to think, what is the client really saying to you? And I can tell you as a CEO, and Patricia can tell you as a CEO, what they're really saying is, I'm busy, I don't have the time, and I want to get to the bottom line. And in their mind, the bottom line is price. But the minute you start playing that game, you've created a product that's a commodity.
Yeah.
So you can never do that. So I like to use the line, I can appreciate you're in a hurry, I can appreciate that you're busy. If you can give me 5 minutes, I can save you hours and hours of research, because I know this is a complex product offering, or I know it's difficult, but I can walk you through not only what our product is, but what to look for as you make a decision, whether it's with me or not. So if I can just have 5 minutes, because without that trust and that interaction, there will be no sale. And unless you're selling a product that's exactly the same as your competitors, price doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. Good. Paul, would you like to read us the other questions, because I see there's some coming in?
Yes. The very first one that we get pretty much every sales webinar is, what is your recommendation for getting to the real decision maker?
Yeah, that's tough. You know, really what you want to do is you've got to, and again, this goes right back to rapport. You have to find a champion. And there's a lot of research on that today. Somewhere in the organization that has influence. That's going to be the key. So you don't have to get to the decision maker on the first call, but what you do need to do is find a champion, find somebody who believes in your product, and then have them present it upstream. Now, you always want to be on that call when it's presented. I will also say one of the most important things if you are just cold calling and you need to get to that decision maker, is you, and Jill Conrath, one of my mentors, talks about this all the time, you have to study the company in advance.
Yes.
And I find that, again, talk about default mode and laziness, sometimes we're just so busy, we just pick up that phone and make a phone call. Find out everything you can about that company. Find out, again, as Jill calls, about trigger events. What are those trigger events that happened in the company, so that you can have a meaningful conversation, and then you need to align with their priorities and values. And if you do your homework, you can usually do that. And then leave a message without a lot of jargon. You know, I hate jargon. We have state-of-the-art new technology, and it's like, wah, 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 right? And then you can leave a meaningful message or have a meaningful conversation about, you know, gee, I just heard that you acquired 3 more properties in such and such an area. We specialize in helping those acquisitions run smoothly. Love to have a 5-minute conversation. Now you're relevant. Now they trust you. Now they know you've done your homework.
Perfect. Good. Good. Paul, is there another?
There's one subject that I wanted to mention. Someone asked, is it not true that regardless of what profession it is, selling is a part of any job, regardless of where a selling team member or our idea, making an argument compelling enough that they agree with us, isn't that considered a sale, like an engineer that works in sort of a sales capacity when they're trying to sell their products, basically?
Wonderful question. And yes, according to Daniel Pink in To Sell is Human, he says that if 1 out of 12 people are actually in a sales profession today, okay, these numbers are changing as I stated earlier, but I think it's 45% of the time, even if you're in a non-sales profession, as an engineer, you're selling somebody something. Good friend of mine trains over at Apple, and she's training the engineers how to present, and that's where Patricia's expertise comes in, okay? Because what Patricia does is she teaches people how to say what they're going to say. And yes, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a salesperson trying to sell your boss on something, you have to have great presentation skills. The pitch of your voice, the stories you tell, the spaces you leave. These are all things that Patricia is a master at.
And certainly, Shari, when you talk about doing your research, what I recommend most people do when they have their champion, I always say, well, one, if people are speaking on your behalf when you get to the higher level, real decision makers, we have to speak to be remembered and repeated. And if somebody is going to be repeating what you're saying, you need to be very clear. And John, be sure to tell your leadership that you're giving them the words to actually say on your behalf. And when you get to a presentation, and just at my speech this morning, I get people to come up and deliver the opening, and this was a sales professional. And he said, well, thank you for your time. No, never thank people for their time. Everybody thanks people for their time. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss how our offering can be better for you. And I always say, you'll never go wrong starting with congratulations. And that's exactly what you're saying. Do your research. What are they proud of, especially if it's more obscure. Excellent. You have to dig for it. If you can prove in your opening line that you know about them, you've got their attention and you've got a competitive edge over everyone else who says, good morning, hi, my name is Patricia Fripp and I'm with the Fripp Company and we have this unique methodology and we've been in business for 20 years. And I always say, if they're ready for a demo, does it matter if they don't know how long you've been in business?
Excellent point. And I see a lot of people saying, well, they just want to quote an email. I'm going to respond to that. And Patricia, I want to tell you a quick story that just happened. My husband and I were going down to Salt Lake City. I live in beautiful Park City, Utah. And he's been wanting to get a really nice truck for a long time. And as you can imagine, and he's an analytic. Okay, he's a physician, so he's very analytical. And as we're going down the hill to Salt Lake, he says, you know, I'm not buying a thing today. I said, oh, of course not. You're not buying anything today. I perfectly understand that. Well, we found a salesperson, Jake, who was super, and he did his research. And because we called him an hour before, we wanted to know if they had the particular model. So we got there, and Jake shook my husband's hand. He says, you must be Lee. I understand you're the past president of the National Ability Center. Congratulations. I have a cousin that went there. It's for people with disabilities, and it changed her life. They talked about it for about 4 minutes. We hadn't looked at one vehicle. My husband leans over to me and says, I think I might buy a car today. They look pretty nice. He hadn't seen a thing. So, again, a lot of these things happen subconsciously. And again, same with email. They want an email quote. Congratulations, Justine. I see that you just got elected to the Chamber of Commerce. Would love to give you a quote. Do you have a cup? But if you start that way, what you're doing is you are separating yourself from the competition.
Good.
And that's what's important.
Perfect. Paul, do we have some other questions?
Absolutely. Kimberly asked, well, she said that 90% of her communication with clients is email for her business. So do you have any suggestions for ensuring that clients do open the emails?
Oh my goodness. There is a whole science on getting people to open emails. And I don't claim to be the expert on that, but I have used many of them. I can tell you what you don't want to do. You don't ever want to say, you don't ever want it to sound generic. And again, this is the whole thing. Look, I want to just start and say how crowded the world is with products today. There's been some research. It's called information overload. And there has been some research that since 2011, there are 5 times more products and services on the shelves and available than there was just in 2011. My brother, Dan Levitin, is a well-known author. He wrote The Organized Mind. And he came up with some research, that we take in, get this, 100,000 gigabytes worth of information in a day. Now, I can tell you, this is more information in a day than 100 years ago we took in a lifetime. My guess is every one of you has an email that's full to the brim, right? You've got to-do lists that never get to done, right? You have all of this, and there's always something else. So, and I will tell you, people would rather make no decision than make the wrong decision. So on your headers, what you don't want it is to be generic. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tips, okay? They're a little tricky. And they change with time. So again, you've got to stay educated. A big one today, and we've been trying this out with a lot of our clients, is just the word meeting. I'll tell you why. The reason that your open rate is high on the word meeting is because very often somebody thinks, oh my gosh, do I have a meeting today that I don't know about? Now, it's a little tricky, but it works, okay? Again, you want a high open rate. The other thing you can do is, again, just do things with a sense of humor that are a little bit different. And you got to take risks, and you got to take chances, and then test to see how it works. We sent one to somebody the other day that said, I'll bet you think I won the lottery. Huge open rate. Why? Because it didn't say just following up. By the way, never use the word just. You're lowering yourself. Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. So, yeah, you're right. The name of the game is to get open rates. And there's a lot of ways to do it and a lot of ways not to do it. Those are just a couple.
Well, very good. Paul?
Yes, Janice actually came back with a little bit more clarification about getting to the decision maker. In her case, it's a rather niche market of speakers. So getting to someone who's in charge of buying speakers. So I guess the question would be, how do you figure out who is in charge of buying whatever you're selling if there's not just one purchasing person?
If you're so let me just understand. So you sell speaking. You're a speaker. Is that correct? And you're not sure who the decision maker is?
I think she means physical speakers because she said who's in charge of buying speakers. So
speakers like what we listen to on our pardon?
Like a physical speaker where you're listening to something.
Oh, wonderful. And
not speakers like Shari and Fripp. You mean speakers as in amplifiers?
Speakers like Bose and Sony.
Oh.
Bose and Sony. You know, this comes down to research. You can do research and you can find out who that decision is.
Actually, it is public speakers. I'm sorry, she clarified.
Yeah, I thought she meant public speakers. Well,
Patricia, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Okay, well, when it comes to public speaking, and I have a certain philosophy that goes along, and Alan Weiss, if you're a speaker, you need to buy $1 Million Speaker by Alan Weiss. And Alan and I both have the same philosophy, and that is that what you have to do is create so much interest that you get inquiries. So if you're a beginner speaker, you need to tell everybody that one, I have a program on, please recommend me to clubs or organizations or associations you belong to. Once you have a handful of clients, you need to ask for references. It worked very well. And we'll do another session just on this, but it's a matter of, one, become an industry expert, which is that, Shari, I became an expert in death care. I became an expert in manufactured housing.
Right.
I became an expert in lots of industries. You go out as a mystery shopper. So it's amazing. There are so many ways that this, but there is no one title in a company.
Yeah, and I will tell you, the best medium today, and again, look, don't let anybody kid you that there's such thing as a get-rich-quick. I think that's a message I want to give everyone. And it doesn't matter how good your product is. It matters how well you market it. That's critical, particularly for a speaker. So I got some great advice from a mentor, and it works. And that is, put out your own blog and make sure it's good content. Now, what does that entail? That means you have to know how to write. If you don't know how to write well, take a free Coursera course. But you want to write relevant content. And today, videos are 20 times more exciting to people and 20 times more viewed than just a written blog. So get yourself on video like we're doing here, and and the average time is 2 to 3 minutes. And the good news today, I remember when I started out 25, 30 years ago, I had to hire a whole production crew. It was $10,000 to create a video. Today you can do it on your phone or your laptop and get it out there. And it's just keep practicing. But you really want to put content out there.
All right, Paul, there are another couple of questions because I'd like to show people Shari's website because, as you know, with decades of speaking and more than a century probably between the two of us, or almost a century, we couldn't tell you everything in 1 hour what we know. But Paul, a couple of specific questions?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and combine this one. Make it a two-parter. The first part is, if you're a new salesperson, entrepreneur, and you haven't built a name for yourself yet, how do you break through to new clients? And the second question is, how do you motivate salespeople that have worked with you for a long time? So the first one is getting new clients as a brand new entrepreneur.
I suppose it depends on what it is you're selling, and like Patricia said, it depends on what market you're in. But we really live in a day and age where we've got to get ourselves out there, like I said, through the internet, through video. And you know what? I'm going to give you one more piece of advice, and this was a good piece of advice that I got, and that is change your circles. Change your circles of influence. Again, habit. We tend to go to the same parties. We tend to do the same things. Do something you've never thought of doing before. Just say yes to everything. Oh, there's a seminar on branding. I'm going to go to that. Oh, here's a hiking club. I'm going to go on that. The more people that you surround yourself with, whether you think it has to do with business or not, the better. And make sure there are people that are different from you, that have different ideas. President Lincoln was known for creating a team of rivals, and that is, he brought people into his cabinet that were actually his rivals during the election. So surround yourself with different people, go out, do things, stay busy, and get your pitch down of what you do and who you are, which is probably the topic of another webinar, and make sure that you're doing lots of different things in different arenas.
And if there is an industry that your product or service is perfect for, go to their meetings.
Yes.
Every industry has an association with a local chapter in your city. You have to go out and meet people. It gets started. And for sales managers, of which we have 40% tuned in, Paul, what was the second part? How to get
How do you motivate salespeople that have worked for you for a long time?
In other words, it sounds, Shari, as if they're getting the little habit laziness is sinking in.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You know, I think that the first thing to realize is that we're not all motivated the same way. So what motivate, and it's no different than a client, right? I'm going fly fishing for the first time with my family. We're going to Alaska. I'm very excited. And I know there's all types of flies that you use for all different types of fish, right? And isn't it the same for customers? Different things are going to interest different people. There was a new study in Harvard Business Review about high impact motivators. What's a high impact motivator? People are incentivized and people are motivated emotionally. And what Harvard did is they found over 300 motivations, emotional motivators, I've called them for years. And it determines our behavior. From the brands we buy to the mates we choose, you have to understand that people are motivated by one of 12 highest impact motivators. So while there may be 300, there's 12 that are very high impact. Our job as managers is to find out what motivates Patricia. This is going to be different than what motivates me. And you can sit down with them. There's many personality profile products that'll help you with that. But I think that's the first thing is don't think of a group of salespeople as a generic group. You want to find out what's specific to them, just like you would with a customer.
Okay. Paul, can you go over, let's go to Shari's online learning system, and we have offered for our viewers today, never happened before, we're going to actually, if people were interested in both our learning systems, we have a special offer. You can have two together. So tell us about this website, Shari.
Well, this is a culmination of 30 years of work, and what we've done in our academy, we've got two academies. We've got the Universal Sales Academy, and that is for all salespeople, and then Levitin Group is known for their work in the hospitality industry with companies such as Hilton and Wyndham and others. So if you're not in the hospitality industry, I suggest you look at our Universal Training Program, and we have everything in there that you've asked. How do you prospect? How do you get people in the door? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you keep a relationship? Tell the customer what the product won't do so they'll believe what it will do. What questions do you ask up front so that you minimize your objections in the back? We talk about how to tell a story like Steven Spielberg. There's an arc to a good story. There's a method or distinctions to how to tell a good story. And of course, what everybody wants is closing. And we've got quite a few sections on closing. We talk about how to close the procrastinator. We talk about how to isolate objections. And we also talk quite a bit about how you stay motivated when times are tough. Because that's half of it. I say in my book, what you do matters, but who you are matters more. And how do we take the constant rejection? What do we do? How do we keep positive when we keep hearing no? How do we know what to do next when we're just starting out? All of these things are critical. And so in our Universal Sales Academy, we go through that. And when people hear the price, they're not going to believe it. We literally have never done this before. Since Patricia Fripp and I joined up today, we're going to tell you that this price, if you join in the next 48 hours, is unbelievable. And then I have my very famous Resort Academy that people have been using in over 40 countries and on 5 continents. And we haven't made it available to individuals, Patricia, in 2 years. You would have had to be a company spending $30,000, $40,000 to get either pieces of these content. And we're just now, with this webinar, making it available so individuals can have the best, highest paid summer of their life.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Paul, let's go over to Fripp VT. So for many of my my users and followers here are familiar with it, but Shari's friends and clients are not. So if we go to Fripp VT, and then Shari can tell us how through her you could get both of them.
Absolutely.
All right, good. Now, while Paul is bringing that up, oh, Shari, give us 2 good questions to start the questioning process. Just
when you're meeting with a client, you want a couple of good questions? You know, really what I do is I divide questions into 3 types of questions. And it's first level, second level, and third level question. I can tell you this. You want to ask who, what, where, when, but the real questions that are going to give you the real meat are the why questions. That's going to get to one of those high impact motivators. Very, very important. And when you're selling to a corporation, what you really want to do is you want to not only find a problem, but the implications of that problem and what it costs them not to solve it. And there's a whole methodology for that we go through.
Okay, perfect, good. And always remember, people make decisions for their reasons and not yours. Good.
That's right.
Yes, Paul?
I was just going to say that Deborah said that she has supplied the Shari's website through her job at Hilton, and it's her go-to for refreshers all the time, and she loves it.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, thank you for that endorsement. And Paul, so of course, Fripp VT is all on powerful, persuasive presentations. And so they're all aspects of presentations. And if we can go to the sales course, and many companies invest just for the sales course, although there is plenty else. And if the first one is available, Paul, we'll go to, Superstar Sales Presentations, the Inside Secrets. Welcome to Superstar Sales Presentations, the Inside Secrets. In this course, you will learn the secrets of making your sales presentations more compelling. This will give you a seemingly unfair advantage over your competition. If you're ready, click the Start Training button. Well, why don't you, Paul, how about Nobody Can Resist a Good Story Well Told, Chapter 6? Have you noticed it often seems that our prospects are trained to resist a sales presentation? Don't worry. Nobody can resist a good story when it's well told. The reason you tell stories is because your prospects will not remember everything you say. They will remember what they see while they listen to you speak. When you have strong competition, you have to tell better stories than your competition.
All right.
All right, so, and if you're familiar with Shari's or if you're familiar with mine, you know it's as if you were having your own sales or presentation skills coach there with you 24/7, and you will never disturb us if you want to watch it 2 o'clock in the morning. So, all right, we'll come
Patricia,
back.
Do I have a moment to show the actual courses? I think I couldn't see it at the time. Maybe I can just do a quick.
Okay, yeah, sure. So you want to go back to yours again?
If we can, yeah, just go to the Universal Sales System.
Okay, and Paul will bring it up. And Shari, if you just want to click on, if you click on the bottom, you'll see Paul's screen, and then it will fill your screen, and it's easier for you to communicate.
Wonderful.
Give me just 1 second to pull that back up, and I will let you know when it's up.
Okay, so let's have a look if there are other, tons of brake spray when you refresh it.
How do you tell an emotional story in an email or letter?
How do you tell an emotional story in an email or a letter? Well, define an emotional story. Every story will, when it's well told, emotionally connect. By an emotional story, if you're a speaker telling an emotional story, you want to make sure you probably don't want to make him cry in the first story. For a sales situation, when you tell a good story, it's as if you're bringing your satisfied clients with you. And stories are about people. So you need characters, and you need to give them a backstory. Now, even if you're in an industry where you cannot actually mention your real clients, but you certainly can say, John was a senior vice president with a $2 billion technology company. So at least you have the idea. And every speaker, every sales professional, every sales manager needs an arsenal of good stories that they can bring out, and your stories need, and situation or problems or challenges need to match your prospect. And imagine, just as Steven Spielberg would tell all Hollywood movies, and I also look at Hollywood because they know how to tell stories like nobody else. What you do in a movie, you shrink what might have happened in a year, and you put it all in this one incident. So I don't care if it took 4 months of conversations to get this actual conversation. When you retell it, you said, when I first met John, he said, help. Now, he might not have said help, but if he had taken the problem that you might have uncovered, how would John have articulated his problem? So when I first talked to John, he said help. We have been the market leader for decades, and now suddenly we have a major competitor eating our lunch, and this is what's happened. So how would he actually state it if he had the words to do it? Then, so what we did for John sounds very much what we do for you, Shari. We started with our 3-step process, which is bullet, 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 and then if John were here, I am confident he would say, I would not have believed it possible that we could regain market share, increase market share, and lower our marketing costs. You will not go wrong investing in. So that's when you do this well, it's as if you are taking your satisfied clients with you. So with that, Shari, let's bring up now, if you click on the bottom, you can see your website. So do you want to, what segment?
Let's go over to the training center, and that was terrific, Patricia. So we've got everything here from prospecting and networking to introduction, the psychology of the sales process, connecting and building rapport. Why don't we go ahead and click on connecting and building rapport? We talked about that a little bit, just so that you can see what we've got on here. So we've got a couple of courses here, the 3 secrets to connecting with any customer. And again, I know a lot of you said, well, how do I connect via email? Here's a big one, how to love the unlovable. How do you connect with somebody you don't like?
Oh, now that is, because believe me, if they've got money, even if you don't like them, you want to find a connection.
We do, and we talk about a rapport building technique, and I'm just going to give you a quickie on this. And if you'll go back, Paul, if you don't mind, maybe you can click on prospecting while we're waiting. But one of the things that I find salespeople do, a quick little default, is we do a shotgun approach. We've all heard you're supposed to build rapport with somebody. You're supposed to find a commonality. And so you'll say to somebody, what do you like to do? Oh, I like to hunt, or I like to fish. Well, if you don't like to fish or you don't like to hunt, you go, oh, what else? Oh, what else? And so that hunter or that fisherman says, well, gosh, it's really important to me. So a big question we get is, well, how do you connect with somebody when you really don't have anything in common? Come on, Shari, I'm a vegetarian, and all this guy does is hunt. What you can do, and I'll leave you with this tip, when you find somebody and you can't seem to find that commonality, rather than going wide, go deep. What is it you like about hunting? How long have you done it? Who do you do it with? And I guarantee you'll find a man who might say, you know, I just love being in nature, or I love spending time with my 16-year-old boy. And then all of a sudden, you're not building rapport based on activities. You're building rapport based on values. And that's when you earn true trust. That's when you get the ability to find out who is that decision maker that I need to get to? This will be your champion. So that's...
Here's a bonus. When you're asking these types of questions, whether people know it or not, they associate feeling good with talking to you.
Yes.
And a lot of this, and certainly I'm sure this goes in your category of new science, it's the real connection, even if, and most likely, they don't know why they feel good when they're with you. They just do. Or if there are 5 messages, oh, well, let me call Paul back. For some reason, he always makes me feel good. I need to start the day well. I'm going to call Paul first. Whatever he wants, it's going to start the day.
That's exactly right. And there's a chemical called oxytocin, by the way, that is released when we feel good. It's called the trust hormone, and a good story releases oxytocin. So back to your point on stories. So all kinds of, that's another webinar as well, Patricia. I think we might just have to do another one.
Let's click on the prospecting button if you have it there. Poor old Paul, we put him on hold and chatter on. Okay, I'm going to shut up while you click on the button, Paul.
Now I have prospecting networking pulled up, and we have just a few minutes left, so if you all want to let them know in the next few minutes how they can take advantage of this offer as well.
Yes.
Well, we've done something crazy, and I talked to you about an email header. You must have thought we won the lottery.
Yes.
You must have thought we won the lottery, what we're giving you here. Patricia, what does your system usually cost for them to get your whole system?
Well, if an individual signed up for a year, just paying monthly, it would be over $500 for a year.
Over $500, and of course it's priceless, because when we can learn to tell these stories, if we just get an extra sale a month, that's huge. Now, my system, okay, very similar. My resort system has a ton of content, so that actually sells for $9.95. And my universal sales program, which has over 80 courses in it, sells for $7.95. So if you were to get my least expensive system and your least expensive system, Patricia, it would be $1,300, $1,400 on any other day of the week. But we decided to do something crazy. And I didn't win the lottery, Patricia, did you?
No, I didn't.
but we want to do something very special. Patricia and I are new friends. We enjoy working together. I want to give benefit to Patricia's following. She wants to give benefits to mine. For the first time ever, you can buy both, this is true, for under $500 for a year. So that would be $4.95. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Whatever you say, yes.
Whatever. Okay, so you have it. She's going to kill me later, right? But it's $4.95. You get both Patricia's system and either my universal sales system or my resort system, but you're going to get a 2-for-1, a $1,700 value if you act within the next 48 hours. If you want to share it with a friend, I guess you can share it with a friend. We will never do this again, and that's a promise. This is a first-time offer. We're thrilled to be able to join forces and offer this to you. We want you to have the best summer of your life and not only sell more than you've ever sold, but we really believe you need to be able to spend more quality time doing the things you love, your high-impact motivator, whatever that might be. Spending more time with your children, spending more time traveling, or socking away a big wad of cash for a college education. Whatever it is, we want to give you the tools you need to succeed. And so we're going to be offering that to you today.
Okay, and what website are they going to go to, Shari?
The website that they're going to go to is written right here, and John's going to help me set that up.
So it's Shari, which is with an A, Levitin, E and 2 I's.com/get training with 2 T's. And believe me, if you emailed either of us, we would give that to you. And Paul, actually, when you send out the replay button, Paul will send out a link to that as well.
Yes, and actually,
Yeah, and bear in mind, this is only for the next 48 hours. Like I said, this is not our normal offer. If you were to go to my website, $9.95 or $7.95, and this is something new for us, offering individuals the opportunity to get the same benefits as Deborah's getting from her company at Hilton.
Okay, good. So let's just, Paul, and you've written that also in the notes, I'm sure, the chat box.
well, they'll get the links in the confirmation email that comes out with the replay, and they can purchase the offer from those links and those links only.
Okay, perfect. Good. And Paul, if you can just give a quick demo, because we're very aware of people's time commitment, just to see 30 seconds of the virtual Shari.
Absolutely. We'll start at the beginning of prospecting and marketing, expand your network, and increase your leads.
Okay.
I know each one of you are in a different organization, and that's how you're building your network, is through these different organizations. And one thing that I think is the most important thing, I was listening to a great video lesson, a TED Talk from someone from Boston Consulting Group. And this is just so true. It's something I talk to students about all the time too. There's a tendency for all of us to go to the same types of events and to hang out with the same types of people. So there are people that are just like us.
All right.
All right, so we talked about that earlier as well.
Good. So let's give them, Shari, if you were to, so one, we encourage you to go check out, take advantage of our offer, but give us 2 other action steps based on this webinar, short action steps.
A lot of people asked questions that had to do with differentiating yourself.
Yes.
And one thing I would say is you want to read everything you can get your hands on, but you want to write differently than anybody else. And I'm going to tell you to take risks, because that's the only thing that separates us. Be your authentic self. When you're authentic, people feel it. And I will tell you, today's customer more than ever before needs authenticity. So if you speak from your heart, you can never go wrong, and take some risks.
Okay.
The second thing that I would tell you to do, and I say this all the time, listen so hard that it hurts. I want you to not only listen to what the customer says, I want you to listen to why it matters and to what's the emotion behind the words. Find out their high-impact motivators and link it to your product or service.
Thank you very much. So now you have heard just a snippet of the brilliance that is Shari Levitin and why she's in demand in 40 countries and as well as online. And from Patricia Fripp, may I remind you that when you tell good stories that are emotionally connecting, you're taking your satisfied clients with you on your sales call. I challenge you to record your sides of conversations, to record your rehearsals. And if you're selling a high-level product, you better be rehearsing. One, if you're new, to make sure you're telling the story effectively and asking good questions. Two, if you are more seasoned, the chances are you might be in sales hell and you might be getting lazy by thinking, hey, I'm experienced, I can wing it. And let's wrap all this up with people make their decisions for their reasons, not yours. They are more interested in themselves than you, and when you can genuinely, as Shari said, do your research and talk just to them and genuinely say congratulations and structure your sales presentation, your sales conversation around what they are interested in rather than talking about your products and services. You're going to do that, but only as it solves their problems, their challenges, or their opportunities. Thank you, Shari. We send you the replay link. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will let you know when the next webinars. I'm delivering one on superstar sales presentations and another one on LinkedIn, which is such a popular subject for sales professionals. So with that, thank you for your attendance, and go sell using your heart as well as your sales techniques.